So after learning about these different ways that cells can make ATP, phosphocreatine, glycolysis, fermentation, and cellular respiration, I kind of left off with this weird comment about how that actually can explain the difference in meat types. Why is some meat, pretty dark red, while others is mostly white? What's going on there? Well, to understand that, we need to zoom in with a microscope on meat and recall that meat is simply muscle. And so if we zoom in on a muscle, what you find is that at the cellular level, and remember the cells are like spaghetti noodles, and we call those spaghetti noodles muscle fibers. So these cells are muscle fibers. There actually are different types. Some are lighter in color, and some are darker in color. And the lighter ones are called fast twitch fibers, and the darker ones are called slow twitch fibers. And the reason they got those names is because you can actually add a chemical to a microscopic slide of fresh muscle tissue, and you can actually make the muscle contract and do the sliding filament thing by adding this chemical. And what they found is when you add that chemical to the lighter colored stuff, that contraction happens pretty quickly, hence fast twitch. The darker ones are a little bit slower, hence slow twitch. So that's where they got their name. So what's going on? Why are there different colors? Well, slow twitch fibers, again, got their name because they contract slowly, and these are found mainly in dark meat. Now, if they contract slowly, think about which source of ATP they likely rely on. If they're slower, is that phosphocreatine? Is that glycolysis, cellular respiration? Which is the slow one? And hopefully you said they use cellular respiration for energy because that is the slower process. And you may recall that cellular respiration requires oxygen to do it. And so these slow twitch fibers need to store oxygen. And there's actually a molecule, I mentioned it a few lectures ago, that stores oxygen in muscle cells. And you may recall it rhymes with glioglobin, and it's myoglobin. So it contains a lot of myoglobin in order to store oxygen for cellular respiration. And myoglobin, you may recall, is a reddish colored pigment. So if you have more myoglobin to store oxygen, that's going to give you a redder color and you're going to be darker in color. That's why dark meat is dark. Interestingly, this type of muscle also contains more fat because fat can be used as a fuel source for cellular respiration. And that's why dark meat tends to be a little juicier and, in my humble, correct opinion, tastier. If you disagree, your opinion is wrong. Fast twitch fibers, on the other hand, these contract quickly. They're found in light meat. And again, since they're quicker, they use mainly glycolysis and fermentation for energy. And glycolysis and fermentation, is it aerobic or anaerobic? Hopefully you said anaerobic. And since it's anaerobic, it can't use oxygen. So as a result, it lacks myoglobin because oxygen is not needed. And since there's no myoglobin, it doesn't have that reddish color, and that's why it's lighter. And it also lacks fat, since fat can't be used as a fuel, which is why light meat tends to be drier and not as tasty, in my, again, correct opinion. So, if you think about a chicken, the dark meat in a chicken is in the legs and thighs, while the light meat in a chicken is in the breasts. Why is that? Well, if you think about what a chicken does all day, it just walks around. So it needs its endurance in its legs and thighs so it can walk around all day. The wings are really in a chicken just used to kind of like sprint away. If you like chase a chicken, it'll kind of and kind of flap its wings to get away from you. And so it's really more of a sprint thing in that breast meat. And so that's why chicken breasts are light in color and chicken legs are dark in color, because those those leg muscles need that endurance, hence the dark meat. Interestingly, for a goose, it's just the opposite. In a goose, they're flying these long distances, and so it turns out that the breast meat is actually the dark meat in a goose, and the legs are light meat in a goose. Cows are the same thing. Cows have been artificially bred over many generations to be calmer, more docile, and just to kind of stand around eating. And so they are like ultra, super, uber dark meat. And that's why it's so red. It's because they kind of just stand around all day. And so it's mostly endurance muscles. They're not doing a whole lot of sprinting. They also have a lot of fat in there because, again, that can be used for energy, and they've been bred to have more fat. And this is why red meat is not as healthy for you. It's because there's a lot more fat in there, which is a direct result of them using cellular respiration for this endurance muscle. Isn't that interesting? That's kind of cool. Hopefully that's cool. So you're passing that Thanksgiving plate around and you're trying to get the light meat, dark meat thing figured out. You can explain all this to your family. They'll be impressed. Um, so that's about it. So you're now ready for that homework 5D. Again, this won't be due today. That's going to be a later due date, so don't worry about that just yet. But that's all we got. Thanks.